NBC's Tom Costello is covering everything from this story in Washington. And also with me is former FAA and NTSB investigator, as well as MSNBC aviation analyst Jeff Guzzetti. Tom, what's the latest that we were learning on this crash and investigation? It seemed like that briefing was light on details from the president of the airport there.
Yes, but they are sticking to the letter of at least in the United States, the letter of the law, and I would presume in Canada too, in that the only people who can comment on an investigation once it's active, in fact, are the investigators. So that would be the Transportation Safety Board of Canada and probably also NAV Canada, should they actually get involved in making public statements. I did think what was important here is you heard from the commanders saying that they were up against heavy fire conditions when they arrived. They immediately put foam on that fire. The fire response, as we have suggested, was very, very fast, praising the flight attendants as well for keeping cool under pressure and getting everybody out as fast as possible. Let me let you listen to what one of the witnesses, one of the passengers, said about how this all went down, and it was terrifying.
All of a sudden, I just remember being fully sideways, and I was looking down and just seeing like sparks and flames and whatever was grinding against the ground. And then, yeah, it happened pretty dang quick, and we were just upside down hanging from our seatbelts.
Imagine that and how terrifying that must have been. Immediately, as we said, the airport fire department was on the scene. They were assisted by the neighboring city's fire department and then the paramedic services, which arrived on the scene. One of the commanders for that paramedic service talked about the injuries that they saw as they arrived. Take a listen.
Upon our arrival of the crash site, our staff were faced with a multitude of different injuries, mainly stemming from back sprains, head injuries, anxiety, some headaches, nausea and vomiting due to the fuel exposure.
Yeah, thankfully, we're told that nobody was critical, which is amazing coming out of this kind of a crash. At this hour, the runway there remains closed. Two runways remain closed, actually, an east-west and a north-south runway because of this ongoing investigation, and the debris remains actually on the airfield as investigators will start to piece through the remains of this regional jet. I want to underscore this is a Canadian investigation, the Canadian Transportation Safety Board, and then you do have the U.S. NTSB and the U.S. FAA assisting, but they're not in charge. This is very much a Canadian operation. And Ali, as we've talked about before, and Jeff Guzzetti can talk about this as well, the Canadian Transportation Safety Board investigators are among the best in the world, hand in hand with the U.S. NTSB.
Tom Costello, thank you. And Jeff, Tom teeing us up there, doing my job for me. What do you think, based on the video that we've seen of the exact moment of the crash, that those safety investigators are going to be looking for?
The TSB, the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, is very good. In fact, sometimes we invite them to investigate accidents in our country if there's a potential conflict of interest, and we do the same for them. The investigators, Ali, are going to be looking at the black boxes, right? And that's going to really tell the tale about the vertical descent rate of this airplane as it landed. I mean, from the video, you could say, hey, it was a hard landing, but you really can't determine that until you get the metrics at how hard it did land. It appeared to land on its right main landing gear. Was there an issue, a pre-existing issue with that gear? We don't know yet. So investigators are going to be looking into everything, really. This is a major accident. They're going to be looking into the flight data recorder, the cockpit crew communications, the design stress limits of the Bombardier CRJ landing gear, the airport clearing the runways, the response. So they're going to be very thorough.
There were also a lot of questions during that press conference. Again, that was not held with investigators. It was held with the president of the airport. But there were a lot of questions that went unanswered around the state of the runway. Was it slick? There had been snow. That seems like it's a place for ample investigation, right?
Yes, and you can be sure that the investigation will answer those questions. Now, whether or not it was a factor, we just don't know. I mean, quite frankly, as you watch that landing, I don't think the airplane even had a chance to skid because as soon as that right main landing gear came down, it damaged that right wing and the airplane tumbled. Still, what was the decision making about keeping the airport open during strong crosswind conditions? The crosswind or the wind conditions could be an issue. So you could be sure that the airport's aspects will be thoroughly investigated by the TSB of Canada.
Absolutely. And Jeff, the FAA, we've made this point before, has no jurisdiction over this airspace, and the Canadian authorities are, again, leading this investigation. But the crash doesn't happen in a vacuum. It comes after 4 deadly crashes in recent weeks. You had the collision here in D.C. over the Potomac, the Philadelphia medical jet crash, a regional flight crash off of Alaska, and then a collision between 2 private jets in Arizona. For people who see all of these crashes and also worry about safety, as we're hearing about these recent cuts at the FAA, what would you tell them to give them a little bit more confidence in getting back to the skies?
Allie, I would tell them that I could certainly understand their concern. Very rarely do we have a spate of commercial serious accidents like this, but aviation is still statistically incredibly safe. I personally would not be fearful to take a commercial airline flight. And with regards to the FAA cuts, yeah, I don't think that this is the right time to have cuts in the FAA of any kind. But still, commercial aviation is incredibly safe in this country. And one other thing, even though this is a Canadian investigation, it was a U.S. air carrier that receives oversight by the FAA, Endeavor Air in Minneapolis. So just because it's in another country doesn't mean we should dismiss it. In the end, all 4 of these investigations need to proceed. Their circumstances are all different. We have to let the investigations take place so that we can learn and prevent future accidents.
And certainly we'll be tracking those investigations as that information becomes available. Jeff Gazzetti, I hope you'll come back and help us make sense of it as we get that. Thank you.